Our scripture is John 6:24 through 35, and that's on pages 1059 and 60. Okay? John 6:24 through 35. So when the crowd saw that Jesus was not there, nor his disciples, they themselves got into the boats and went to Capernaum seeking Jesus. When they found him on the other side of the sea, they said to him, "Rabbi, when did you come here?" Jesus answered them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, you are seeking me, not because you saw signs, but because you ate your fill of the loaves." That sounds reasonable, I guess, but not the purpose. Do not work for the food that perishes, but for the food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give to you. For on him God the Father has set his seal. Then they said to him, "What must we do to be doing the works of God?" Jesus answered them, "This is the work of God, that you believe in him whom he has sent." So they said to him, "Then what sign do you do that we may see and believe you? What work do you perform? Our fathers ate the manna in the wilderness, as it is written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat." Jesus then said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, it was not Moses who gave you the bread from heaven, but my Father gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is he who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world." They said to him, "Sir, give us this bread always." And Jesus said to them, "I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me shall not hunger, and whoever believes to me shall never thirst." I titled this, "Jesus is Not All I Need." Because bread is really important to our diets. And Jesus did say that he was the bread of life. But we don't need more than bread to live on. Right? No. Wrong. We need more than bread to live on. We can't just eat bread. Although some of it's pretty good when it comes out of the oven and it's hot and it's got butter on it, yeah. But we need Christ. Not just bread, we need Christ. So here we are on the Sunday before Thanksgiving, one of the biggest feast days on Americans' calendar, Thanksgiving Day. So it's perhaps not surprising when we read where Jesus turns a dietary item into a metaphor about his role in our spiritual quest. "I am the bread of life," Jesus said. And of course, bread itself is not primarily a holiday food, is it? I remember last Wednesday night, there was some bread there, but there was also a lot of other good stuff. Yeah. And just like your table will probably be at home, there's going to be a lot of other good stuff. Thanksgiving table. Oh boy. It's also a basic staple of meals all year long. Christ is. Not just the bread that comes out of the oven and it's nice and warm and got butter melting on it. Christ is our staple all year long. In fact, the prayer that Jesus taught us, we're told, "Give us this day our daily bread." And you read that, give me my daily bread, my nice hot bread with the butter on it. No. Give me God. Give me Christ. Fill me with Him. He is who I need. He's the one. You see, all I need is not just bread. I need Jesus. And typically we talk about bread and Holy Communion. We'll have communion in a week or so. And while it has a place on a Thanksgiving table, it's also a basic staple of years, also a basic staple of meals all year long. I have relatives. It's not so much this way at our house, but I have relatives that if they don't have meat, potatoes, and bread, they didn't have supper. I mean, that was part of what had to be on the table. You had to have meat, you had to have potatoes, you had to have bread. And Jesus, of course, is the bread that's broken for us. And that bread, think about that. That bread is broken for us. Broken for us. Consider this. Having bread to eat, let us be thankful. Therewith, let us be content. But having bread that really nourishes us, having the bread of the Spirit, the bread of the Father, the bread of the Son, that's really the bread of life. That's what really causes us to perform, to become what we should become, to become Christ-like. But is bread enough? Jesus says, I am the bread of life, so you'd think that he understands bread as the most basic, fundamental, and perhaps only substance a person needs. Or perhaps he knew, I'm sure he did, that bread is not the only food a person requires, but is a necessary foundation for a nutritious menu. Not just a nutritious meal, but the bread of Christ is part of a nutritious menu. Nancy Clark is a sports dietitian, and she says that bread provides only the foundation for a healthy diet. She implies that much more is needed in one's diet than bread. And Jesus, who, as far as I know, was not a sports dietitian, but knows everything anyway, once retorted to a famous tempter, man shall not live on bread alone. Oh, man shall not live on bread alone. So there you have it. Jesus calls himself the bread of life. Do we need more in our lives besides Jesus? Well, we need more than just that bread that comes out of the oven, don't we? Could Jesus be suggesting that while faith in him is the vital foundation for a spiritual life, a healthy spiritual life, with healthy spiritual needs, there are some other ingredients as well? Yeah. A lot of other healthy ingredients. We think that's a reasonable conclusion. By the way, there's no way, as you gather around the Thanksgiving table Thursday, that all of you will just be giving thanks for bread and water. Kirk prayed for us Wednesday night. There was more there than bread and water, wasn't there? Yeah, there sure was. And you see, that's the way Christ is. He's more than just bread and water. He's everything to us. It's His Spirit within us. It's His ways about us. It's following Him. It's learning the way that He wants us to go. It's all part of being Christ-like. And we need to be Christ-like. For that's who we are. And things are getting short, if I can read in my newspaper or see the TV, on very many people who still love the Lord. There are a lot out there, but there are a lot that have turned their backs too. Jesus leaves open the possibility that we can distort our spiritual lives by getting this bread metaphor wrong. And one distortion is to try to live on the bread of life alone. This really happened. We were working at Kirkwood, a couple miles down the street. Oh my goodness, 25, 30 years ago. Well, I started here 26 years ago, so it had to be 30 years ago, I guess. Campground. And I remember a young fellow named Dave, and he tells about a prayer chorus that he learned as a young teenager at church camp. And it went like this. He is all I need. He is all I need. Jesus is all I need. He is all I need. He is all I need. All I will ever need. Dave was only a new Christian in those days. And he certainly hadn't yet had much life experience, but even at that point, that chorus struck him as unrealistic. Jesus is all he would ever need. Frankly, he doubted that. And he says that he learned that chorus right about the time he was starting to notice girls. Aha! There might be other things there, you see. And his emerging adolescence, he was finding them pretty interesting. And he concluded that no matter how close he became to Jesus in his life, there'd be no danger, shall we say, of Jesus taking the place of relationship with a girl about his own age. And this was a concern of his. But actually, you see, no matter what our age, no matter how deep and vital our relationship with Jesus, and no matter how committed we are to following His example and trusting His teaching, it's a rare one of us who really finds that faith in Jesus alone is enough for spiritual health or any other category. And if we really consider the implications of Jesus' statement about being the bread of life, we can surmise that He never intended to be all we ever need. He's more than just the bread. He's everything. He's everything. In the first century, of course, all the actual bread was whole grain. And the refining process that yields white bread had not yet been invented, but neither had the capacity to enrich bread either. So the whole grain bread of Jesus' day was even less nutritionally complete than our bread today. So we can assume that Jesus' bread of life statement meant that faith in him is the essential foundation of a spiritual life, but is not everything we need for spiritual health. That's the least part of the reason from the time of the early church on, Christians have found it essential to meet together, to gather together. Didn't we sing about that? Huh? To gather together for worship and for fellowship. It's a need that we have. The author of Hebrews told his readers to not neglect to meet together because they needed to encourage one another and to, quote unquote, provoke one another to love and good deeds. And that's Hebrews 10:24 through 25. We need to provoke each other to love and to good deeds. Jesus is not all we need. Almost certainly some of the spiritual leaders we've heard of who have gotten themselves in moral difficulties prayed about their temptations and called upon Jesus to help them. But if they had also availed themselves of the accountability possible within a group of Christians, they might well have found the strength they needed not to fall. Jesus is the bread of life, but not the whole meal. If I'm having a problem, is there someone I can trust? Is there somebody I can talk to? Is there somebody who will listen to me? A Christ-like person. A believer. A follower of Christ. Is that person available to hear me? Is that person available to give me compassion? Is that person available to clean up the mess I made last night? You know, is that person available? Jesus is the bread of life, but not the whole meal, because he is within all of us. He is there within all of us. And we need to be there for one another because he has spread his love to all of us. Another distortion of our spiritual lives can occur if we try to live without eating any of the bread of life. That doesn't work either. Thanks to Dr. Atkins, remember that guy? We have learned that it's possible to live without eating actual bread or almost any carb-bearing foods. But the Atkins diet is no friend of athletes. One of my favorite writers is a guy named Stan Purdom. And Stan includes, I guess I like him so much because he includes a lot of humor in his writings. But he decided he needed to lose weight. Not that he really needed to, but he decided he needed to lose weight. So he, I'll give you an idea of what kind of guy he is. He's the author of two books for sure. One of them is Roll Around Heaven All Day on his bicycle. And the other one is Plane in Traffic. So that's the kind of stuff he comes up with. But he was trying to lose some weight a few years ago, and he needed to do something. He decided to ride his bicycle. And he decided to use a 15-mile route that he had used before. He'd ridden it many times. and he tells what happened. I'm reading what he wrote here. He says, "From the first push on the pedals, I noticed that I felt drained. In fact, in the first mile of this ride, I felt the way I normally feel at the end of a 50-mile jaunt." That's after the first mile. "Nonetheless, I persevered thinking my energy might kick in. But after about 3 miles, riding seemed like a terrible idea, and I took a direct path home." That sounds like me. "Logging a total of less than 5 miles for the entire excursion." To use a car metaphor, he says, "I felt as if I were hitting on only 2 cylinders instead of the usual 8. I had similar experiences on 2 more rides I tried during that diet. Long rides were out of the question, and even short ones were enervating. I soon gave Dr. Atkins the boot." Likewise, it's possible to be a spiritual, though not a Christian person without eating the bread of life. But such spirituality tends to be limp, unfocused, lacking in the kind of energy that Jesus provides us. And certainly one thing Jesus did mean when he said he was the bread of life is that our most basic and important human longings were there to meet him. And they would be met in him. And he is the foundation for a healthy spiritual diet. A spiritual diet. And to be a Christian, we need Jesus. It sounds axiomatic, but you'd be surprised at how many people would love to be Christians without having to deal with Jesus. There are people who could knock on your door. "Are you a Christian?" "Yes, I am." "What is a Christian?" "I don't know, but I am one." Yeah, sure you are. You're a Christian because you're not a Jew or a Muslim. No, that doesn't work. A third possible distortion of our spiritual lives is that we eat too much junk food. Think of this spiritually now. The bread of life ceases to be our mainstay. Spiritually, we get a lot of spiritual junk. And this is different from the previous distortion in that in this case there is no deliberate attempt to avoid bread, but rather that we fill up on so many empty calorie delicacies that we leave no room for truly nutritional things. What nutritional things? Well, what do you know about the Holy Spirit? How does he work in your life? Etc., etc., etc. And this, while appearing to have eaten too much, we actually are starving for the nutrients that we need. In terms of spiritual life, we do the same thing when we give lip service to our faith, but don't bother in such ways of dining on the bread of life as praying. "Oh, I'm supposed to pray?" Preacher does that on Sunday. Yeah, you're supposed to pray. Well, how do you pray? Well, I got news for you. One of the things you do is listen. Listen? Yeah, God might have something to say to you. Oh, really? He's got some bread for me. Spiritual bread. Bible reading, intentionally doing good things, giving to the church and those in need, participating in the Lord's Supper, and partaking of other means of sustenance that God provides through Jesus Christ is part of it all. And though means such as these, God has made it possible for us to be continuously nourished by the bread of life. So here's why we talk about this on Thanksgiving Day, or almost Thanksgiving Day. We will sit down at tables laden with all sorts of goodies. We give thanks for all of it. But we're not going to be eating turkey every day for the rest of our lives. For the next 2 weeks, maybe, but not for the rest of our lives. We're not going to be eating cranberries again for perhaps another 6 weeks at Christmas, or maybe not until next Thanksgiving. Yams? Are you kidding? Do people like yams? Well, I do. So we're thankful for all these things, but we're thankful most of all that we have daily bread, because it comes in more than one way. In a real sense, in a spiritual sense, we receive daily bread all the time. We get blessed so many ways, so many necessary ways. But the one constant we can count on is Jesus, our daily bread. Yes, he is. Jesus may not be all that we need, because we tend to categorize it. But when we look at all that he provides, the spiritual resources that he sends to us, that's fantastic. That's walking with the Lord. That's sitting here right now just feeling good, because you can sit here right now and feel good. Jesus may not be all we need, but we better not try doing it without Jesus all the time. And such a habit leads inevitably to malnutrition and weakness. And I can but say, come ye thankful people, come. It's almost Thanksgiving, and we have a thankful group of people that love Jesus Christ. That's on page 797.